I'm Janet Colson and teach nutrition at Middle Tennessee State University. Pregnancy is the period of most rapid growth and development in life. Successful pregnancies depend on what we eat before and during these 9 months. Pregnancy requires a healthy egg from the mom and sperm from the dad. Women must be at a healthy weight to release an egg each month during ovulation. If an egg is fertilized by a sperm, a zygote forms, travels through the fallopian tube and is implanted in the mother's uterus. Nutrients from the mother's diet are stored in her uterus to nourish the zygote. Therefore, a woman needs to be very careful during the pre-pregnancy period to have a good diet. The father is important too. Healthy sperm require that he be at a healthy weight, avoid excessive alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, and eating a good diet. Diet for pregnancy or pre-pregnancy or pregnancy is similar to a healthy diet. We need to make sure that we're consuming a lot of omega-3 fats from fish like salmon, vitamin D either from dairy foods or from supplements. Folate from leafy greens are best, but supplements are good too. Then iron-rich foods, beef and chicken liver are great sources. Last year, we had some exchange students from Egypt, and they introduced us to the most delicious sandwich, and it's made from liver. It's a great source of iron. There's certain things that decrease fertility. Fertility is basically the ability to become pregnant. Underweight women and men are less likely to become pregnant. Emotional stress can affect it, eating too much, high caffeine intake, all of these things decrease fertility. Exercise is beneficial for health, but too much can decrease body fat, which decreases the estrogen levels. As estrogen levels decrease, ovulation stops and an egg is not released each month, and women stop menstruating. Excessive exercise can impact body fat and menstruation. This chart gives an idea of the effect of menstrual cycles based on the amount of exercise a woman does. You can see at the bottom that the sedentary women is least likely to have irregular menstrual cycles. But then the competitive bodybuilders have the greatest likelihood. Competitive bodybuilders do everything possible to decrease their body fat and increase the muscle. So again, exercise is good, but excessive amounts interfere with fertility. Caffeine and fertility. Studies show that caffeine decreases our chances of becoming pregnant. If a person consumes 500 milligrams per day, it decreases the chances by about 50%. 300 milligrams decreases it by about 27%. This diagram over here shows the caffeine spectrum. In other words, the amount of caffeine in various beverages. Tea has less caffeine than coffee products. Cold brew tends to have a lot more. Here in the U.S., nitro has become very popular, and nitro is basically cold brew infused with nitrogen gas, and most of it has more than 200 milligrams of caffeine per container. Another thing that's become pretty popular here is having caffeine added to everything. These on the left are the Vita Energy. These are caffeine mints, and each mint contains 40 milligrams of caffeine. On the right, we have Zenergy, which is a caffeinated chewing gum with 50 milligrams of caffeine. So you combine that with some coffee every day, and the amount of caffeine can really increase. Fetal development. Growth and development rates in the whole lifespan are greatest during the 9 months of pregnancy. You go basically from nothing, and the little egg weighs almost nothing, to 8 pounds at birth. If the rate gain continued at this level, at 1 year of age, infants would be about 160 pounds. Fetal weight gain during gestation based on 10-week intervals. At 10 weeks, the body, the whole baby only weighs like 10 grams, very, very small. And you can see that at week 30 is when the weight gain really increases. If a baby is born preterm at about 30 weeks gestation, they're going to be very, very tiny. And looking down at the times in which the protein and the fat are accrued in the fetus, it really increases towards the end of pregnancy. Looking at the calcium stores, most of it is stored at the latter part of pregnancy. Therefore, a preterm baby is typically going to be fed special types of supplements to make up for what is typically deposited in the fetus during the last weeks of pregnancy. In looking at the components of the mother, the growth components of the mother, the fetus, again, it's similar to the previous slide, but the placenta, and the placenta is the organ that develops inside a mother's uterus during pregnancy. It goes from basically nothing, 20 grams at 10 weeks, to 670 grams at birth. The uterus also expands, 140 grams at 10 weeks, and it continues to grow throughout pregnancy as the fetus gets bigger and bigger. The breast increase too. I tell my U.S. students that typically during pregnancy, you're going to increase about 2 bra sizes. Then at the bottom, we can see the extra fat that's stored. A lot of girls are like, ooh, this is not good. We don't want extra fat. But that extra fat is very, very important to have a successful pregnancy. The rate of weight gain, when we compare the weight gain of the mom and the fetus, we can see in the first trimester or the first 3 months, there's basically no weight gain in either of them, or very small weight gain. And you can see it beginning at week 12, then is when the mother starts gaining weight. But the fetal weight gain really begins at about 28 weeks gestation, again, towards the latter part of pregnancy. This illustration shows the weight gain per trimester in the female. And if you'll notice her belly, at the beginning of pregnancy, at the end of the first trimester, there's a little bit of a pooch, a little protrudement of the abdomen, but not really that much. Typically, when girls become pregnant, they typically begin to, their waist expands to the outside instead of protruding out the front. And towards the end of pregnancy, you can see that it really increases. And again, the baby gets bigger. Weight gain during pregnancy. Now, some women think that they're eating for 2, and they eat twice as much as before. And this results in excessive weight gain, which increases the risk of many complications for the mom and the baby. Proper weight gain and total weight gain optimizes birth outcomes for the mom and the babe. Weight gain recommendations are based on a woman's pre-pregnancy weight status. If a woman goes into pregnancy underweight, for BMI is under 18.5, she needs to gain somewhere between 28 and 40 pounds. Healthy weight women, 25 to 35 pounds. Overweight, 15 to 25. And then the obese woman needs to gain a little bit of weight, but not that much, maybe 11 to 12 to 20 pounds. If you're having twins, then you need more weight because you're going to be you're going to have 2 placentas in most instances, and you'll have 2 babies. Healthy weight women, 37 to 54 pounds, overweight, 31 to 50, and then the obese woman, maybe 25 to 40 pounds, somewhere in that range. In the United States, we often see in doctors' records a weight gain chart similar to this. And you can see the first trimester, there's very little weight gain. Then in looking at the overweight woman in blue, she needs to gain weight and it needs to be at a regular rate, but it needs to be much lower than for the normal weight or the overweight woman or the underweight woman. Now, how many calories do we need during pregnancy? First trimester, we don't really need any extra calories. We're not gaining that much weight, and there's really not that much being accrued in the fetus. Second trimester, an additional 340 calories, and the third trimester, 450. Again, keep in mind that the baby is growing most at the latter part of pregnancy, so that's why we need more calories at that time. Nutrient needs during pregnancy. Protein needs increase from 46 grams, and that's based on 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, up to 71 grams. That's an additional 25 grams. Carbohydrates increase a little bit. Folate doubles, going from 400 micrograms per day to 600 micrograms per day. Calcium needs, interestingly enough, don't increase at all. A woman should go into pregnancy with adequate calcium stores. And since the calcium is not accrued in the fetus's bones until the latter part of pregnancy, the fetus is not going to really be drawing that much calcium from the mother's body. But 1,000 milligrams before pregnancy and during pregnancy. Iron pre-pregnancy needs are 18 milligrams, and during pregnancy, what's recommended here in the U.S. is 27 to 30 milligrams per day. But the World Health Organization recommends 30 to 60 milligrams. Now, realistically, to get that amount of iron, you really need supplements. Typically, 1,000 calories provides about 7 milligrams of iron per 1,000 calories. So if a woman typically eats 2,000 calories, that's going to be only 14 milligrams of iron that she's consuming. During pregnancy, she might need 3,000 calories per day, but still that's not an adequate amount of iron. Iron needs are based on the amount of iron in the fetus lost at delivery and the amount that's needed for increased red blood cell mass. Remember that blood volume increases during pregnancy, and with that, we need iron to help make that to make the red blood cells. And another little note back to my liver. 4 ounces of beef liver contains 5.5 milligrams of iron, making it an excellent source of iron. I was kind of curious about the amount of iron deficiency, or the prevalence of iron deficiency. I was kind of curious about the prevalence of iron deficiency in Pakistani women. And I found this article. It was published in 2021, but they looked at 500 women during the third trimester of pregnancy, and they followed them from September of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, to January of 2021. And to me, what was amazing, they found that 63% had iron deficiency, 25% had severe iron deficiency, and only 12% were in adequate iron status. Now, it's interesting that we all absorb iron differently. Some of us absorb iron extremely well, some of us absorb it too well, and others are poor iron absorbers. So that accounts for part of the differences. But the authors of this, they concluded that the reason there was such prevalent iron deficiency was due to poor iron in the diet. And that's kind of sad, in my opinion. Now, iron supplements during pregnancy. To get 30 milligrams of iron or 60 milligrams of iron really requires some type of iron supplements. A baby who is born to a mother who is iron deficient, the baby is at greater risk for delivering early and having a low birth weight. It's also related to lower scores in the baby in intelligence, language, gross motor, and attention test. So again, iron in pregnancy is very, very important. Again, liver is a great source. I like to look at hormones, but these are the changes in hormones that occur in a woman during pregnancy. We're all familiar with progesterone and estradiol or estrogen. Those levels really increase during pregnancy. But this other hormone the human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, it really increases at the beginning of pregnancy. The chorion is a little membrane that surrounds the zygote in early pregnancy, and that chorionic membrane releases this hormone. For years, we thought that this was the cause of morning sickness, but now we know that that's not true. However, one thing that's interesting is pregnancy tests work by detecting the human chorionic gonadotropin protein. It binds to the antibodies that are in the test, and it turns it pink if there is this hormone. So therefore, a pink test means you're pregnant. Nausea during pregnancy is a fact of life. Mild nausea that might result in vomiting occurs in about 70% of women. Thankfully, it goes away by 20 weeks on its own. And this type of vomiting and nausea does not result in dehydration or hospitalization. Hyperemesis gravidarum, however, is a severe nausea with constant vomiting that is seen in 1 to 3% of pregnancies. This lasts the entire pregnancy and it is severe. It typically results in dehydration with hospitalization. Basically, with this, the woman is not being able to absorb anything because she's throwing up all of her nutrients. If you remember, Princess Kate had this condition, and I thought it was just with the first one, but I read somewhere that she had it to some degree with all 3 pregnancies. It is genetic. The tendency to have this condition runs in families. So if your mother or grandmother had this, then you're more likely to have hyperemesis gravidarum. There was an interesting study I found, and it was looking at a new hormone, and this is the growth differentiation factor 15, abbreviated GDF, and it is linked to maternal risk of nausea and vomiting during pregnancy. This hormone acts on the brainstem, and it is thought to be the cause of hyperemesis gravidarum, but it's not really known what causes it. But this study is pointing out that they found that it was the fetal production. In other words, the baby producing this hormone, and it's passed to the mother, and the mother is sensitive to it. So again, it is a condition. Now, this hormone, the GDF15, is beneficial in pregnancy. It helps to maintain early pregnancy. It promotes the placental formation. It acts as a protective mechanism for the mother and the fetus, and it serves to protect the mother from toxins. So it is beneficial, but the adverse effects is that it causes you to become sick. Pregnancy-induced hypertension is another condition that's pretty common in pregnancy. It's high blood pressure that starts during pregnancy. It affects about 10% of pregnancies here in the United States. Preeclampsia is elevated blood pressure accompanied with protein in the urine. Then eclampsia is a more severe form of this condition. And it is very rare because preeclampsia, it's kind of like you develop preeclampsia and they detect it and they start treating you for it, hoping that it will not develop into full-blown eclampsia, because that condition can actually result in death. I was curious about the incidence of pregnancy-induced hypertension in Pakistan. I found this article, and this one looked at 10,000 Pakistan women. And they were looking at the incidence of pregnancy-induced hypertension. And they found that the total amount was 11.6% in Pakistan that had some form of this. 4.3% had preeclampsia, and then thankfully only 0.1% of those women developed into full-blown eclampsia. So again, it does occur, the eclampsia, but once it typically does not get to eclampsia. Typically, once preeclampsia is diagnosed, they start treating it, and then to prevent it from progressing to eclampsia. Now, with this, because it is high blood pressure or hypertension, we might think, oh, it's the sodium, but it's not the sodium. What a woman needs to do is she needs to moderate her sodium, like all of us need to do, but she needs to eat a healthy diet with ample fruits and vegetables that are high in potassium, ample calcium from dairy and green vegetables, regular physical activity, not weightlifting, but just normal physical activity, and maintaining a healthy weight. So this could probably be prevented to some extent with a healthy diet and regular exercise and weight gain that is at the recommended amount. Another condition that we see in pregnancy is gestational diabetes. This is elevated blood glucose levels in pregnancy. Women are screened for gestational diabetes at about 24 to 28 weeks. The screening consists of having your blood glucose levels drawn at fasting, and then you drink a sugary drink, and then they draw the blood thereafter. Ideally, the fasting blood glucose levels will be below 95 milligrams per deciliter, and 1 hour after the meal, 140 milligrams, and then 2 hours, it's gone back down to 120. Now, the problem with gestational diabetes is that the high blood glucose levels in the mother bring extra glucose to the baby, and it's like overfeeding the baby, and the baby gets very, very large. So the baby might weigh 10, 11, 12, 13 pounds in a woman who has gestational diabetes that is not treated. The risk factors of gestational diabetes: being overweight, going into pregnancy overweight or obese, lack of exercise during pregnancy especially, having prediabetes when you go into pregnancy, pregnancy with the previous baby when you had gestational diabetes. So if you have the condition with your first baby, you're probably going to be at risk for the second one. If you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, you're at greater risk. Immediate family who had gestational diabetes, or if you've had a previous baby that weighed greater than 9 pounds or 4 kilograms. This chart shows the prevalence of gestational diabetes worldwide. You can see that in Southeast Asia, there is where the risk is highest. We have a 25% prevalence, actually 25.9% prevalence, which is 26%. But when we go over to Africa, it's only 13%. When we think about Africa, typically women in those countries, because there's less food and because they don't have cars, they walk more, they get more physical activity, then they're typically basically healthier. And the prevalence of these types of conditions is lower. Cravings during pregnancy. A craving is a strong desire for a certain food, such as eating pickles with ice creams. These are not associated with nutrient deficiencies. So some women do crave foods. However, pica, P-I-C-A, is a craving and eating non-food substances such as dirt, clay, and crayons. And yes, here in the United States, one of my first jobs was working with our WIC program. And WIC is a government program that provides healthy foods to pregnant women, infants, and children. And we were required to ask the mothers, do you practice this? Do you practice pica? And they would say, what? And it was kind of like, they were thinking, well, I eat Coke, or I drink Coke and I eat candy, so I eat non-food substances. And then we would say, oh no, dirt, clay, and crayons. And it was amazing to me that many women did have this condition, but it might be a sign of iron deficiency, or the eating the dirt and clay could damage the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. I found an article that in Pakistan, because I was wondering, is this condition prevalent in Pakistan? But this was an article that was What Stops Us from Eating, a qualitative investigation of dietary barriers during pregnancy. So with this, they had a rather small sample size. They had 21 women who were in the in-depth interview, And then 20 women they just did with focus groups. And what this next table shows the characteristics of the mothers. They were a pretty well-educated group, and most of them were over 26 years of age, and most of them had 2 or 3 children. So they questioned these women, and what they found is food cravings. The interviews revealed that women craved a variety of sour, sweet, and salty foods, with preferences varying across pregnancy. So they all varied. Other cravings included non-edible or non-nutritive items such as ice, chalk, or dirt, a condition known as pica. Now, this was a qualitative study, so they were asking women questions. And these are 2 statements that I found very interesting from a healthcare worker. Some pregnant women develop a craving to start eating clay and coal. From a mother, when I was pregnant, I craved eating baked clay, particularly in the last trimester of pregnancy. My mother-in-law had forbidden me to do so, but I was eating it secretly. So again, in Pakistan, this problem does exist. So what to eat during pregnancy? This is now a little bit different than in the non-pregnant state, but during pregnancy, avoiding undercooked foods, undercooked eggs, undercooked meat, raw fish, and sushi. We should avoid those because they might be contaminated with some type of bacteria. And having a bacterial infection in pregnancy is a damage to the fetus and to the mother. Also, as we mentioned before, excessive amounts of caffeine, alcohol in any form, and then certain types of cooked fish. Now, salmon is good because of the omega-3 fatty acids, but certain fish, mainly the large fish, have a greater likelihood of having mercury in it. So you want to avoid high mercury fishes. So what should we eat? Healthy foods, healthy oatmeal, fatty fish that has been approved, leafy greens for the folate and other nutrients, nuts because they're high in healthy fats, beans and lentils, they provide protein with also a good amount of iron and fiber. Yogurt, it's high in protein, high in calcium, also has healthy probiotic bacteria. Avocados, a healthy type of fat, and lean meats. So this is just kind of an overview of what we should eat during pregnancy, and I tried to emphasize a little bit more on Pakistan. If you have any questions, please contact me at janet.colson@mtsu.edu.